Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I am Daniel Torres. When I'm not hosting this podcast, I'm the Director of Executive Search at Dwyer Partners, recruiting top talents in the consumer goods and retail industries, which are exactly the industries which we cover in the FMCG Guys podcast. Twice a week, we speak with top talents, leaders, and luminaries in the consumer goods and retail industries, indeed. And we're now over 180 episodes in, which is hard to believe. So do go into our website or your favorite podcast platform to entertain yourself and hopefully be educated a little bit with some of the industry's top voices. Remember, we also have a sister podcast, all the sister podcasts at the other side of the Atlantic, called the CPG Guys. They just reached their 400 episode. So do congratulate them and do tune into them to learn about the consumer goods world at the other side of the Atlantic. And also, if you haven't yet, remember to follow us on LinkedIn, where you'll join a community of, hopefully by the time this goes out, 16,000 members and counting. We're nearly there. And you can also now find us on Instagram. So today I have I would say the honor to have the founder and CEO of one of the most exciting up-and-coming companies in the retail media, e-commerce, grocery space, particular audience. It's James Taylor. How are you, James? Good to see you.
Very good, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me.
Tuning in from the other side of the world, Sydney, Australia. But
yeah,
Bondi, Sydney, right? Exact. To be clear, to be exact.
Absolutely. End of my day, start of yours.
Exactly. So James, we met this year at Shop Talk. We also saw each other in Cannes. We had some good times there. When are we seeing each other next? I think it's Grocery Shop, no?
Seeing you at Grocery Shop in Vegas in October, and then again in London at Retail Media Summit UK in October.
Indeed. Any other events you or your team are planning to be at with Nielsen?
Yeah. So I think
Nielsen, Langdon at both Nielsen in London or Langdon in the US.
Langdon in North America. He's just been at the Lead Summit in New York, where he was collecting an award on our behalf. We made the leading 100 list, which was really exciting. Nielsen, I think there's another retail media event in September or October before Retail Media Summit UK. You can pretty much guarantee Nielsen will be at a retail media event if it's on in Europe. And then I think I'll actually be in London as well at the start of September for the AWIN Black Tie Ball, which AWIN are actually doing some really interesting things now in the retail media space. Historically, they were sort of affiliate and performance marketing.
So getting a lot of points on your airplane loyalty card, no? Getting a lot of miles.
Yeah. I might need to revisit the policy that we only fly economy as well. But
yeah, I mean, goodness, from Australia, it's quite a flight to go anywhere. So we met, and you were already the founder and CEO of Particular Audience, but I was actually, obviously, as a good headhunter, which is my background, it's stalking you a bit on LinkedIn and looking at your career background. And you actually started in investment banking, right?
Yeah, I did. I started my career in mergers and acquisitions, and that was in India, in Mumbai, doing a lot of cross-border M&A for a lot of sort of FMCG deals,
really?
cross-border. Yeah, so acquiring, disposing of assets in Europe and Southeast Asia, as well as in the mining and the metal space.
Nice. How did you start your career in Bombay, out of all places?
So it was 2010, and the GFC was in full effect, and all of the investment banks in London were cutting headcount quite significantly. So I just started looking at emerging markets, and this job came up, and soon I was landing in Mumbai, where I'd never been before, and trying to find my feet.
Great town, by the way. I've been there a couple of times, and actually, it is one of these places that I could live in, I feel.
It's a super fun city. Yeah, it was an incredible experience and time at the start of my 20s. So yeah, always look back on it fondly.
So how did you go from being an investment banker in Bombay to starting particular audience?
So with the same bank, I moved back to London, where I'm originally from, and again, that was sort of supporting Indian corporates in overseas capital raises and acquisitions and divestments. And I think it was about the time of the Facebook IPO. And I have always been interested in tech. If you think about that time, I moved back to London in 2011. The iPhone had only been out for 3 or 4 years at that point. It was still all relatively nascent, as recent as it feels. And I think I was always just keen to do something in tech. So I ended up partnering with a couple of friends and you shouldn't necessarily go into business with your friends, to do a startup called Wager, which was a sort of online markets platform. It's like a user-generated content, user-generated markets platform, from everything from sports to politics to economic outcomes.
Well,
and then that didn't work out. You shouldn't go into business with your friends. Also, 24 or something ridiculous. And I joined a company that was doing quite well at the time. And we took investment from SoftBank and Google. And I moved to Australia to open the Asia Pacific business for them, scaled that up to a few $1 million in revenue, working with everyone from Adidas to...
What did that company do?
So they did rules-based personalization. So there was a human hypothesis behind a given segment of customer, and that segment of customer would come to a website, and that it would sort of do actions, and we would trigger changes to the website based on those actions. And the problem was because it was all human and rules based, there was sort of a human bottleneck to rolling out the sort of breadth of experiences that you might expect to have when you think of personalization. And because it was human hypothesis, half the time it drove a conversion rate uplift, and half the time it did not. Well, and generally, if you gave somebody a coupon code, they're going to buy more. So it wasn't rocket science. But it was good for its time. That was 2014. And I think by 2017, I just started to take a real interest in how Amazon did their personalization, because Amazon's personalization seemed way more dynamic, way more sort of hyper-dimensional, hyper-personalization, if you will. Your homepage on Amazon.com is vastly different to my homepage on Amazon.com. I'd buy books, and the sort of book recommendations were just so compelling. I just spent ridiculous amounts of money buying books on Amazon, and I was always really impressed with the quality of its recommendation systems. And I left that business to found Particular Audience in 2017 to do just that. We would emulate the machine learning smarts behind Amazon.com, and we built it into a platform that we could enable other retailers to benefit from.
Awesome. You thought there's a lot of money in that, and then you decided to look into it further.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to think there's a lot of money in it. I guess commerce as a whole, absolutely. Machine learning at the time, I guess, AI is extremely fashionable now. But also from my first startup was effectively a prediction markets platform. I've always had an interest in sort of behavioral economics and consumer psychology and things, and recommendation systems and machine learning are kind of the sort of absolute peak of trying to automate and predict what people are going to do next, right? Because you're trying to show them that sort of next best action at any given moment. So it's really just core to my interests as well. And yeah, it just happens to have gone extremely well over the last 6, 7 years.
Yeah. And how big is the business now, actually?
So we would be about 34 people full time, and we started in Australia. We opened the London office in 2019. So Australia, New Zealand, probably about 50% of revenue. UK is about 40%. I would say UK and Europe is about 40% of revenue. A lot of clients in Germany, and about 10% of revenue is North America. We opened the North America office towards the end of COVID. Sent two chaps from the Sydney office over. Literally nobody else on their plane. Special travel exemptions, all of
Wow.
that.
Men on a mission, clearly. And James, there's also this. So you started particular audience, and obviously with COVID, there's been a huge. Well, there was a huge boom in terms of like e-commerce and more people that did adoption and so on. And obviously the maybe not everybody is shopping online as some people would predict, but obviously a lot of people have adopted the habit of at least browsing online to find their favorite products. And particularly in grocery, there's been a retail media boom in the last 3 years. How has that impacted your business, and how have you seen it from your perspective?
Yeah, it's I guess in and amongst all of that boom, there's also been corrections and economic strife. I can call it strife. So I guess maybe to talk in timeline terms. So we launched our first retail media product in 2020, I believe.
Wow.
And that was it was quite ahead of its time. It was fully integrated, automated sponsored products within personalized product recommendations cross funnel. So it was, if something is in a payload to be relevant to an individual but was sponsored, we were able to sort of automate its going above the fold. But we had a pretty amazing COVID run from a business standpoint. I think the business grew about 400% year over year in revenue terms. And even small retailers were suddenly doing, massive increases in transaction volume. So the demand for the technology, and not just the retail media technology, the sort of search and recommendation software as a service business that we have, was huge. At the end of COVID, there was definitely a return to in-store shopping, and I think that also meant that a lot of retailers that were on the channel would turn their investment back to the in-store retail, because obviously that had not really had a lot of attention during COVID, outside of the buy online, pick up in store movement. And then you had the Suez Canal, you had the supply chain bottlenecks, you had inflation spiking, and I think we had 3 or 4 clients go into administration off the back of that, because they couldn't get enough stock during COVID. It all arrived, they were ordering loads. It all arrived after COVID, and then they couldn't ship it at the right price to retain profitability in a way that sustained their businesses. So it was definitely a hard time for lots of retailers. But if you add to that context as well, the sort of increase in the cost of acquiring traffic was also spiking quite significantly, especially as Facebook and iOS had the cross-app tracking debacle. And one of our clients, Tommy Hilfiger Calvin Klein, they couldn't even spend their Facebook budgets after that point. So everyone was hurting in their own ways. But retail media has been on this massive growth tear. It has been very concentrated to the biggest retailers, and also in really the FMCG segment. We have a very broad customer base. So we have a lot of clients in electronics and appliances and furniture and fashion. And not all of those have been on the same retail media journey that grocery has. And I would say that, FMCG has moved quicker. The brands that sell through your average supermarket are far more learned when it comes to how they can market and shopper marketing in general, especially where they don't have direct to consumer channels, because they're trying to cling on to any possible data point or signal that they can through retail and proxy the growth of their own businesses through how different retailers are buying and how they're buying the following month, following certain activity in certain areas. And, it's definitely a bit of an art to that. And I think retail media has introduced a bit of a science to that. So it has been a really interesting time to sort of have a business, I think for everyone, COVID and especially in retail. I think the e-commerce is up in general across the board, across categories, not accounting for inflation, in terms of actual, price per unit type normalization of those numbers. It has reverted to the mean, I think, as a still growth trajectory, but as a percentage of overall retail. But I think that also makes the retail media opportunity even more interesting, because in-store is interesting, off-site is interesting. And the leaders in the space, Amazon, Walmart, they have very different propositions for advertisers. And I think every different retailer, whether they're online only, the classified sites of the world, or the omni-channel grocery giants, everyone has a different story to tell from an advertiser standpoint.
Yeah, that's a bit the complexity, no?
And everyone's new to it.
Yeah.
Even the retailers that have got the most established programs, still the work is going on. Still, they're replacing their V1 attempt to launch retail media with a ton more knowledge now. And I was chatting to another retail media tech company who we partner with, and we were talking about the sort of three types of retailer that do retail media in terms of, who do we go after in terms of sales, and who do we look to network with? And there are the retailers that don't yet have a retail media program. And then you have retailers that have had a retail media program for less than 2 years. And then you have the retailers that have had a retail media program for over 2 years and have really started to feel the glass ceiling of, a rules-based, keyword targeting only platform that's limiting their potential growth. And the scale of expertise is just night and day across those retail groups. But with all of the events and marketing and podcasts like you guys, it is educating the market on what to look for and what to think about, so that expensive mistakes aren't made.
Yeah, because the core thing, one of the core things that the issue of the endless aisle hasn't been completely resolved. Like, why is it still difficult to find like the right product for the right customer? Like, you talked about Amazon having like a hyper-personalized homepage, which basically served you automatically all the things that you wanted, or that you wanted and that you didn't know you wanted. So why is that still an issue? Like, because like retailers, I know that they've upgraded some capabilities, but they still need to upgrade some. Like, how do you see that?
Yeah, I think firstly, it's appropriate to acknowledge that the citrus ads and the Criteos of the world have sort of cornered a lot of the market, and they're really media before retail. You could say that. They're experts in media, and I think that a lot of the retail media professionals in the world as well, whilst obviously there's a great deal of retail expertise, again, a lot of them have that advertising or media type background. And if you speak to a conversion rate optimization specialist who's been specializing solely in e-commerce, and I'll speak to e-commerce specifically about this endless aisle problem phrase. If you speak to a conversion rate optimization specialist who's been doing it for 10 years, they're going to have a whole depth of understanding around, first of all, the problem that you say, you have one window of an interface to a website. And you compare that to a store where it's designed so that you walk around every aisle, right? And your face time and awareness of those products is almost forced from like a very physical layout standpoint. You don't have the same thing on a website. You can navigate straight to a product detail page from Google, or you can search and miss stuff if the search experience isn't very good. And you might be buying something but forget to buy the accessories or the complementary items because the cross-sell capability isn't very good. And all of those things that conversion rate optimization specialists have been focused on with search engines and personalization tools over the past 10 years, that knowledge I have found largely doesn't exist so much across many retail media teams. The retail media teams are more interested in fill rate, advertiser engagement, core, let's get the basics right with keyword targeting. And they're not wrong to have done that, because there's just so much to do. They've got to sort that stuff out first before they can get into the other stuff. But because the retail media teams are typically siloed from the conversion rate optimization teams, I think we're going to see a drastic opening of those silos and a merging of those silos, because the reason that Amazon is able to sell 300 million products to 300 million customers is because they do create a different, unique website experience for every customer, a different, unique email communication sequence with each individual customer, and it's always contextually relevant. And we talk about 300 million products. Even if you're a grocery retailer with 80,000 SKUs, the problem still exists, right? The long tail problem in e-commerce is that 80% of an e-commerce website's revenue will come from about 20% of its SKUs, the Pareto principle. And it's because they're the popular ones, they're the ones that rank highest, and they're the ones that everyone grabs all the time. That long tail is actually a huge opportunity, but you can only make it an opportunity if you're able to pull the right individual items from the long tail and show them to the right niche consumers at the right time.
Yeah. What does the long tail mean exactly? Is it the part of products that we don't see?
The long tail would be so I guess there's a couple of applications. You've got long tail search and you've got long tail products.
Uh-huh.
So long tail products would be the niche products that may or may not make it, in a retail, in a grocery environment. They might be a higher risk. A short tail product is going to be your milk, your butter, your Barilla spaghetti. But your long tail, you might have, I quite like them, but mint Kit Kats. That's probably not that long.
Okay.
There's probably like more niche products that are less commonly searched or less commonly found. But I think what we've learned, and certainly what we've learned in pure data terms at PA, is if you can get that right and find the right thing in the long tail for a customer, whether it's a cross-sell, whether it's a similar item to something that someone's looking at that's more sort of appropriate for them, then you can make a lot of money and you can increase conversion and you can increase engagement.
Got it. No, interesting. And what about long tail in search? So I know that search is one of your core areas. I would say of expertise, but I think that James, you're someone that's like a big proponent of getting search right. Like, what are the likes of Amazon getting right, and why? And then actually we can go into like why the others aren't.
Yeah. Okay. So search is a really hard problem, and a long tail query might be organic cotton, not tested on animals. There might be just this string which maybe happens occasionally into a search query box, but not very often.
Yeah.
And actually they're increasing as people start to use search boxes with conversational queries, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We see on pharmacy websites now, certain symptoms are being searched for.
Mm.
Right. And the past sort of 20 years, literally, of on-site internet search has been predominantly keyword search orientated, which means that if I type in a query, chocolate milk, it's going to look for chocolate milk as an exact token match in the database of products. And it's not going to have any automated smarts around the synonyms for chocolate milk. And it's not going to understand the difference between chocolate milk and milk chocolate. And it's not going to be very good at typo tolerance either. So that means that even for a normal search term, if I get it slightly wrong, I'm not going to return certain items. Therefore the items remain in the long tail undiscovered and they don't sell. Or I'm not going to get any results at all, which is obviously bad for conversion and discovery. And this has sort of been like patchwork solved, like the search engines that have been, or at least the on-site e-commerce search engines that have been successful, have built these synonym and redirect rules where the retailer has to sort of create this mountain of rules to make the search engine work for an acceptable customer experience. And don't even get me started on multi-language support, right? Huge problem in Europe. And there is a solution to this, right? So to a particular audience, we used to have a keyword search solution that we sold to retailers. We sunsetted that in 2023. We'd often spoken about semantic search, a search technology, an AI-powered vector search technology that would actually be far better at interpreting search queries and far better at responding with relevant items to those search queries. And actually just getting coverage so that zero search terms go down to as low as zero in some cases. And we were able to do that with the advent of large language models. And interestingly, Walmart have had some press out as well for their generative AI search, which they've partnered with Microsoft Azure.
Yes, yeah.
It's a very similar thing. It's using sentence transformers, which the particular audience search engine uses, to understand the context of words in a query. Like it understands the difference between milk chocolate and chocolate milk. And it understands all of the synonyms automatically. So it strips out all of this manual work and it really understands the intent of someone's search query. And it's able to return relevant items in the most relevantly ranked way. And for anyone that is less familiar with transformers, that's the T in ChatGPT, right? And Google actually, invented transformers for translation. Google Translate was built on a sentence transformer architecture. So it has just had this material impact on improving search quality and reducing the amount of time needed to manage search. And I think that one of the huge problems, we have a retailer, big grocery retailer, I reckon they're missing out on a couple of $1 million a month of ad revenue in retail media because they're unable to cover long tail search queries with sponsored products.
Yeah.
And yet, if you look at the Crealytics report, Amazon and Walmart somehow have 99% coverage of search terms with sponsored product ads. I think Kroger's somewhere in the 70s. I think Albertson's like 30-40% or something, right? So why does that gap exist? And it ultimately is the technology behind sponsored product ads. If you have a retail media program and you have a rules-based keyword targeting option for your advertisers,
Which is the classic.
The classic. It's the citrus ad, Promote IQ type approach, right? The advertisers are going to concentrate their limited time on the most popular high volume keywords. Competition is going to be the highest there. It's going to favor the brands with the deepest pockets and the most expertise in the retail media advertising teams. It's going to exclude advertiser participation, to use the word long tail again, in the long tail of advertisers, the less chunky advertisers, the ones that don't have the resources and don't have the team expertise perhaps. And that is fundamentally limiting the scale and growth of retail media networks today, where on-site is still the biggest portion of the pie by a long way. And it's, I think, I won't get it wrong, eMarketer and Andrew Lipsman came out with, staying still in between now and 2026, most of retail media growth is going to come from on-site search. Well, this is how. It's these retail media professionals skilling up on knowledge and understanding the difference between a keyword search engine and a vector search engine. And who does this? Well, not many people in the market. In fact, I believe it's literally just a particular audience. And how can we automate that search relevancy across all the popular queries, as well as the long tail queries, and even that competition that's excluding participation from the long tail advertisers in the popular queries? We can either overcome that by personalizing search results. If you type in brown sugar and you're a high-end shopper, and I type in brown sugar and I'm a budget shopper, we should see different results. We should get different sponsored product ads because we have different budgets, we have different preferences. Our click probability on that ad and our conversion for a positive ROAS is respectively higher.
And what other results do you ultimately get by having better search and personalization capability? Is it more sales, better commercial relationship with the brands that you're selling as well?
I think it's like a much healthier three-way marketplace between the brand, the retailer, and the customer. It's a better customer experience. It's more intuitive. It's less annoying. The brands are happier. They're not wasting money. They're getting a typical higher conversion on those clicks that they're paying for. They're getting more clicks in the first place. Lots of brands are still very event focused or product launch focused. They want to concentrate performance in that time. So, getting a lot of high quality clicks quickly is a good thing. For the retailer, it's a better customer experience, which means more sales and more loyalty and more ad revenue. It's a kind of winning combination. And just so that I'm not speaking in complete vagaries, Sky released some benchmark data that put the average on-site digital click-through rate in retail media at 0.39% for sponsored product ads across retail media networks. Particular audience has an average of 1.1%. Right? It's 158% increase over benchmark by enabling machine learning behind the search automation, product recommendation, and personalization for the customer.
Wow. So with this on the table, why are many retailers still using classic keyword search and also for sponsored ads, just using classic keywords instead of really using that machine learning capability to really offer a better search capability, a better personalization capability for the consumer, more options to commercialize within their website and offer personalized ads and so on? Is it because it's their current business model and they don't know anymore, and it would mean to disrupt what they've been doing, and that's just difficult and people don't like change, or is there something else?
I think there is a change management consideration for the established programs. If you have a lot of advertisers putting millions of dollars through Citrus Ad, it's a risk and an operational lift to move them onto a new interface or a new platform. But there's obviously a commercial gain to doing so. And without naming names, I think you're going to start to see a lot of really interesting announcements over the next sort of 6 to 12 months of retailers or retail groups that are starting to sort of put the feelers out and test new things. But the other thing that I would say is that composability and compatibility in the retail media space is a theme that I'm also seeing and seeing in terms of actually participating in right now, which is, it might be easy to think of vendors as competitors, but it's so early in this game that these types of market dynamics where there's the sunk cost and the operational change management risk of moving. I think increasingly you're going to start to see smart tech that is incremental and can augment an incumbent start to integrate with and merge. And I think this ecosystem of, would-be competitors, and is that, I think the amount of times that I have heard, one in-store screen tech company talk about another in-store screen technology as sort of competitors, sort of partners. And, the guys that are doing the in-store radio and have some screen capability, but then there's another screen provider and they're still partnering, and we're there with someone that has some on-site capability, but great off-site capability, and there's that kind of conversation going on. There's a big one in the US.
Because composability, and we talked about it on another podcast with Spryker, is that basically instead of using one company to run your whole show, you basically break down your e-commerce capabilities into different vendors for different areas of expertise, right? So that's
Totally.
which is interesting, but it also opens the doors to like really having experts in each part of the e-commerce field, because a one size fits all solution, obviously it works, but it's probably not the best. You're just going to have an average of 5 instead of an average of 8 if you can do it well.
And it's worthwhile if there's incremental gain to be had. And I can think of some examples, but there's one who has a great engagement from the advertiser base in a current platform, and that current platform is extremely capable at providing a bunch of SKUs with a bunch of CPCs. Well, we can ingest those and we can still run those in incremental inventory on the websites. So we don't need to then replace the incumbent. In other cases, they're completely replacing incumbent platforms. So it's very fluid at the moment. Yeah.
So if you were a retailer, like a grocery that's not having like those, that's not really maximizing their potential with search, and is basically using running their e-commerce store like they were doing it 4 years ago, what would be the top 3 things that you would recommend them to do? You can only say 3.
Specifically a grocery store?
Or grocery or online retailer, as you prefer.
Let's take grocery. So the grocery store they have a retail media program, but it hasn't changed in 3 years.
Yeah, correct. That's the scenario.
So they're making some money from keyword targeting today. There's some fixed tenancy banner placements. There's probably some obfuscation between self-serve retail media revenue costs to advertisers and trade marketing rebates, and that kind of like hybrid cocktail of supply monetization, which some retailers make it easy and some retailers make it difficult for brands to understand. What should the retailers do? Well, first of all, I think you start with the customer. So what's going to improve customer experience? And then I think you've got to think about scale off the back of that. Like, why has scale been limited thus far? Where are other low-hanging fruits in a journey? How many times have you bought chewing gum at a checkout in your life? We all do it. It's convenient. Well, I don't think I have seen many grocery retail media networks do a good job at cart page cross-selling and using the machine learning behind what is in someone's basket and what are they missing that's specifically relevant to their basket, and enabling sponsored products in that. Right.
Yeah. So you can't really be claiming, because that's, I think, part of the fault of like grocers right now online is trying to replicate a physical store on your computer, on your laptop, on your iPhone. And while actually machine learning and automated recommendation would really disrupt that and really bring an experience you need. There is one part of the store, of the real, of the physical store, that can be replicated easy, which is that like impulse category, which doesn't really exist that much now, no?
Just imagine if that chewing gum at the checkout was something that was really relevant to you.
Yeah.
Real, did you forget? Oh, you're buying gin and tonic. Did you forget a lemon?
Yeah.
So I think the first thing, the low-hanging fruit I would do is add a cart page cross-sell recommender enabled with sponsored products. Boom. Good customer experience, great advertising opportunity, clearly incremental to advertisers because it's cross-sell. The item wasn't being considered and then boom, added to cart. No risk with competitive conquesting or anything like that. The second thing I would do is run a POC on what a search model would look like based on, trailing 30-day search terms and what sponsored items existed at the time and what items PA would have placed in front of all of those queries that had 0 ad fills. It's 2. Grocery. So something that's a big issue in grocery is stock depth in general. I go to add my Barilla spaghetti and they're out of stock in my local store. Oh, what's the best next alternative item? Right. So we just technically an example, we have a natural language processing algorithm which mines the metadata of all the items on the website. We can tell you immediately with 0 latency what the closest match alternative item is. That can be sponsored real estate as well. Right, so it's just thinking about the opportunities in a typical customer journey in that specific vertical, i.e. grocery in this case, and thinking, how can we just bolt in some more smarts that offers great customer experience, awesome advertiser opportunity, and a better overall, bigger, healthier pie for the retailer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And is there anything else that you're doing at PA, particular audience, that you're very excited about, or that is really like helping your customers sell more, both to customers and to advertisers?
Absolutely. Gosh. So, I think as we said, the market is very fragmented from a vendor standpoint. You've got your offsite channels, onsite channels. I think better integration with those is something that we're definitely front and center of mind for us. Let me get the product roadmap up. So I guess we've got yes, I think there's a lot of obviously technical things that we're launching this year, which maybe to the less technical ear may not make total sense, but we are launching the ability to actually A/B test search models. So anyone that's worked with a search model, how do you know if that search model is the optimal model to actually get the right level of engagement? Could it be better? And you tend to have, retailers sort of almost blindly trying to gauge between these different software vendors that say the same thing. So actually making just different search models be A/B testable within the platform is obviously a critical point to how do you actually optimize and improve. And by the way, we've already had a recommendation algorithm A/B testing for years. So that's a really important way to be able to sort of optimize click-through rate and click conversion rate, which has a direct knock-on to retail media performance. I think partnering with the in-store monetization, from a digital screen standpoint is an obvious bolt-on for us. It's not competing with any of those vendors. It's simply integrating and making that digital inventory available to advertisers in the PA view. And the other thing that's quite an interesting space for us is retail media and advertising is sort of this blurred line. Like, I think I'd probably struggle to define it myself, but let's assume that it involves advertising associated with specific product SKUs. Is that a fair thing?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not brand advertising, it's product orientated. I think we're working on some really interesting opportunities where there are very large consumer websites. Take a classifieds website, for example, where people might be searching for an iPhone, a secondhand product. Well, I'm in the market for that. Surely every retailer and every brand that sells that item is very interested in gaining my awareness of their product or their price or their ability to sell that item new or refurbished. So I see that as being a big opportunity going forwards, and sort of flips and puts the retailer sort of back in the advertiser seat, actually, in many cases, because they want to compete for that those eyeballs. As a result of that as well, we're launching an auto-populating ad set function. So right now, typically you build and launch an ad set around products. I think it's really important to be able to say, look, if I add products to the catalog, I just want them to automatically go into these adverts. And with a keyword targeting platform, they can't do that because the items have to be relevant to the keyword targeting because it's all very manual and approval based. But with machine learning automation, you can just keep adding products to this pool, and the machine learning is going to decide where it's relevant to the customer or not. So that's just
it's exciting times, obviously, and I know that you've just been selected in a startup program, and it's no other than L'Oreal's startup program. What does that mean for the business, and what's that all about?
So I have been so impressed actually with this. I think that there's a lot of corporates in the world that will do innovation accelerator type programs, and I think there's a lot of people that would sort of not necessarily rate them. The L'Oreal program has been amazing. First of all, it is used as a funnel for how to work with L'Oreal, right? Like, it is literally the kind of the onboarding flow of everything from infosec to full tech evaluation. They have technical resources that go into the platform and do audits, and we'll be able to sort of announce more on what the outcomes of it are. But what I can say is that there are going to be proof of concepts launching across direct and indirect e-commerce capabilities. L'Oreal obviously have however many brands that they have, from Garnier to Kiehl's to Lancome, who all retail direct to consumer in lots of markets around the world. So the direct to consumer e-commerce play. And obviously our AI search and recommendation systems are really applicable there to get the best customer experience and product discovery. And then L'Oreal are the largest spender in beauty retail media globally. They make up about 54% of the market, again, to cite a Crinalytics stat. Our relationship with them there obviously has a lot of implications for anyone that sells L'Oreal products.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that. I know it's a key milestone, and I have to say, L'Oreal probably one of the only FMCGs that's really doing direct to consumer at scale, I think. So pretty unique.
Yeah, cracking team. They definitely got everything going well. So yeah, it's really an honor to be a part of that.
So we'll have to stay close to seeing what comes out of that. And James, we have this question to all our guests, which is, if you had to go back to yourself actually before you went to Bombay to start your investment banking career, or just when you were landing, beautiful airport, by the way, what would be that one piece of advice you would give yourself with everything that you've learned?
I think that international experience is really powerful. And I think it's really important to keep that diversity of experience. I think that obviously nothing can beat a hard work ethic. Since that point, I've hired and worked with teams of many people, and everyone has a fundamental sort of strong intellectual capability, and you just see the difference between those that really plug in and work hard towards goals and outcomes and projects and strive for excellence. But at the same time, don't let perfection get in the way of progress.
That's a great piece of advice. You have to be sometimes pragmatic, right? And to get things done. And because that's the thing, unless you're a doctor that's doing a surgery in someone's life, maybe that requires perfection, or an architect when building a building and you don't want it to fall. But in the other side, it's all an iteration, right? So it's testing and learning, and obviously I think it's having a vision and trying to get that right at the end of the day. If I can, sorry for adding to your piece of advice, but I think that is a great one, actually. So James, this was great. I'll try to summarize. I have a lot of notes, I have to say. I'll try to summarize what we've gone through. So first of all, let me congratulate you again for getting into L'Oreal's startup program. I mean, the fact that you get to work with L'Oreal directly is already a hit on its own. So congrats on that, and keen to see what's gonna come out of that during the year. And yeah, see you again at Grocery Shop Retail Media Summit UK. So for everyone that follows us on LinkedIn, and do follow James. I'll obviously leave his LinkedIn profile on the show notes. Follow him as well, in particular audience. Yeah, I mean, I think that in general, it was just very interesting to understand how the likes of Amazon, Walmart, I know Mercado Libre in Latin America as well, their capabilities.
Stormed ahead, yeah. They've done really well. Trumped Amazon.
Exactly. They've been able to really fight Amazon and keep it away from Latin America practically, which is pretty awesome. But it's just so interesting to see how well advanced these are in terms of search capabilities, machine learning, personalization, compared to the rest of the pack. No, we're giving some numbers, which I was, by the way, quite impressed that you knew all these numbers by heart and we're not looking at any paper. So there's just like so much opportunity. So I think that after the boom of retail media, of digital, and then retail media with COVID and post-COVID, I think it's time for retailers to really look at themselves and say, okay, what can we get better? How can we ultimately engage better with our consumer, put the consumer at the center, and like see how they can create an amazing experience, right? And now more like we're in a moment where on-site and off-site emerging, like it's really a moment of change. Things are not going to stay the same, so it's really a good time to look at that part. What else? So yeah, we talked about also the composability aspect, which is a big one. So a lot of retailers are starting to decompose how they do e-commerce, instead of going for one size fits all, really look at different solutions for every different part of the customer journey. And that also has an implication because vendors have to really work with each other. And we're seeing that like in Shop Talk Grocery Shop, where there's all these partnerships between companies that in some verticals compete, but in the others they go to market together, for example. And we talked about starting with customer experience. Where's the low-hanging fruit? And for example, installing a cross-page recommender, which particular audience obviously can help you with. Run a test of ads, offering alternative items. These are all things that can be done. Well, I was going to say relatively simply, and sure, it's not simple. Well, you tell me, James.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think sometimes we're speaking to someone and they're talking about, months and months of integration work on things, and someone can be up and running with our APIs in under 2 weeks.
Wow.
And if they've got no dev resource whatsoever their side, they can copy and paste us into their website header, and we can do the work for them and be up and running in 4 weeks. So there's really two options. And it's really not a lot of Resource.
There you go. And I think that it's just interesting to see how with all the machine learning opportunities, all the upgrades, you can really like just engage customers better and engage the advertisers better. And there's just so much low-hanging fruit. So I would invite people to like think of themselves as a customer and the customer journey they have and what parts of they can improve. And as you've said it, like thinking of the customer journey, how can we actually bolt in some more smart? So just about seeing that and upgrading it. And it's interesting how like not so many grocery stores are doing cross-selling yet. So hopefully we'll see things evolving. Remember, you can obviously reach out to James anytime. And James, it was so good to see you virtually this time, the other side of the world, but I think we'll be seeing some of each other very soon again.
See you in Vegas.
Ah, goodness. Danger awaits. Thanks to all of our audience. Remember to tune into our podcast every Wednesday and every Saturday. And you can also see us directly in Vegas in October. Have a great one. Cheers.